We don't get to do this that often because my partner, business partner, who has joined us, Damien Sanchez, lives in Puerto Rico, is actually moving back to beautiful Western Loudoun County here in Virginia, where we're at today. He's in town this week. We've had a chance to travel all over this week, going to education and New York City, all over the place. But Damien and I have have a chance to actually sit down and talk, and we really just want to talk about our story, like where we started, you know, how we became close friends and then started this business and this crazy adventure that we really never meant to get into. But Damien, talk a little bit about, like, where did you grow up? Where are you from? You're not from Virginia.
No. So I grew up in Southern California, spent a lot of my summers on our farms in West Texas, our cotton farms my grandfather had. So got to do a lot of work back then. Once I graduated from school, moved up to North LA County, and where I was firefighting for the Forest Service. So I did like 10 years there. You know, one of my dreams of getting out of high school was to either go into law enforcement, Marine Corps, or firefighting. Yeah. And ended up going the path of firefighting and set the goal that I wanted to get out in a municipal department, and worked through the Forest Service, got up to captain, and then had to make the decision because I got accepted by Fairfax County Fire and Rescue. And, you know, so then we had to move so did a little under 10 years over in on the Angeles National Forest. And then we picked up, sold everything and moved to Virginia.
Okay. So going back to your California days, being a firefighter, what was that like? Like, you know, we watch what happens and it just seems intense, seems scary.
Yeah.
You know, you have obviously the brotherhood, friends that you were, you know, in battle with, basically. You know, do you have any fun stories or crazy stories that were actually like, this is dangerous?
You know, I mean, there were. It's funny. I came to Fairfax County, and I said my fire career ended and my medical career picked up. Yeah. You know, in the Forest Service, we were always on fires, and we'd go on campaign fires, and so I could never plan anything, because, you know, at a moment's notice you might be up for strike team and, you know, find out like, hey, you know, you guys are going to Montana, and then you'd be off, and then you didn't know when you were coming back. You could be gone for 3 weeks. Sometimes they'd get 2 days of R&R at the fire, and then you could be up for another 3 weeks. And so it was difficult to plan, you know, Michelle, but it very suited me very well because it was like always, I didn't know what was going to happen. And, you know, the tones would go off, and, you know, you'd be on fires. And one of the last campaign fires that I was on was called the Cedar Fire, which was pretty intense. It was very reminiscent of what happened in LA this past year, or no, beginning of this year, and where like the whole town of Julian burned down. You know, one guy, you know, on our line, he died in that fire. You know, and so it's just like, it's very unpredictable and exciting. I was like, but it's not terribly conducive to family life. And so I think it was a good experience to be able to do that. I was on the hotshot crew, Bear Divide, and, you know, tons of fun, but exhausting.
And that beats up your body. That's a young man's.
It does. Yeah. You know, it's very hard on the knees, you know, and so it's like I was looking forward to getting some sort of regular schedule, and certainly Michelle thought, you know, a regular 24-hour shift was much better than being gone 3 weeks at a time.
So you married Michelle. How many kids do you have?
4.
4.
Yeah, 4 kids.
Calvin's the oldest, best friends with my son since they were 6 months old.
Yeah, 18 now, getting ready to go to college.
And you have Noelle and Bella and Owen.
Yep. So ranging 18 down to 12.
So it's a big family.
Yeah.
Unusual nowadays. You moved to Fairfax County, and you and I met shortly after that, but you were working with Fairfax County Fire Department, one of the largest fire departments, I believe, in America.
Well, at least in Virginia. I mean, in the DC area. So very well known. Yeah, so we moved out, and, you know, it was kind of surprising how expensive the housing market was in Northern Virginia. And so for a long time, we weren't able to buy a house. We just rented in a lot of different places, which was kind of one of the motivating factors that, you know, Calvin had just been born in, you know, early 2007. You and I had met in, April of '06, I think, at church. And, and I was like, I need to get another job. Like it wasn't enough, couldn't make enough money with the county unless I was going to work as much overtime as I could. And unlike in the Forest Service where overtime was like unlimited, Fairfax County had strict rules on like how much overtime you could work. So it's like I really needed to find a second income.
And we see it a lot in this industry. There's a number of guys that are in fire departments. Because talk about your schedule. What was that like?
So we worked 24 on, 24 off, and we had 3 or 4 days off at the end of our third shift. So, 56 hours a week on average. And it was, it was a good schedule. I mean, you're gone a lot, but that still gave you, 20 days a month where you could, in theory, do another job. Now, it's hard to do another 40-hour-a-week job, working somewhere that needs you there 8 to 5 every day. So, I was trying to think like, well, what things could I do? And really, like, I've always been an entrepreneur at heart. As a kid, I would take the lawnmower around, knock on doors, say, hey, can I mow your lawn? Can I break leaves? What can I do? And so I was like, if I'm going to put a bet on somebody, like, I'll just put a bet on me. And so I need to start something. Didn't quite know what it was I needed to do. And that's where you kind of came in and said, hey, you want to do nighttime designs for me? And I'm like, sure.
Yeah, so you actually started off in lighting was your first like side job. So you didn't, obviously you knew me and you saw me out there. Like at that point I was going out 6 nights a week.
Yeah.
And, was rarely home. I was just trying to build a business. We became friends and we met at church and then, just hung out a lot and went through a number of things together. But, you were looking for something. I said, why don't you do demos? Which, if you're in the lighting business, you know that the hardest person to find is who wants to go out at night and do the nighttime designs.
Definitely.
What was your goal starting your own business? What were you hoping to accomplish?
So, the big thing was I needed to make more money to live in Northern Virginia. And, you had 2 options. Michelle goes to work and then Calvin goes to daycare, or I do 2 jobs. And since I had 20 days a month off, I was like, well, I could work. And, the opportunity came at Ben's birthday party and, Steve Fenning had the binder about Mosquito Squad and, you were picking one up and then I picked one up in November of '07 and, my goal was to just make $40,000 more per year. And, so then I could make about $100,000 combined, 2 jobs and, provide for the family, and Michelle doesn't have to go do that. And obviously it turned into something much bigger than that, but that was the original goal and motivation was just to support my family.
What experience did you take from firefighting? Because they have a lot of preparation and systems, everything else. What did you take from that and apply to your mosquito business?
I think the biggest thing was learning to work hard. That's something my dad drilled into me. My dad, he's crazy, but the one thing he was militant about was working hard. And that was something I got to carry with me in the Forest Service where, knowing what a hard day's work was, putting in 18 hours of cutting fire line. Like I didn't know what tired was until, you get done, you sit down and you fall asleep sitting and you don't even remember that you fell asleep until you wake up and you're like, wait, what happened? And then next thing you know, like an hour passed, and so I think knowing what hard work was, was probably the biggest thing because like, I think starting a business, the key ingredient is putting in the time and the effort, and which means a lot of hard work.
Mm-hmm. You really thrive on systems and processes. You love the financial aspect of running a business. So you developed systems and processes in your company. How challenging was that?
It was kind of some of the experience I had with you doing lighting design. One thing we kind of realized was, you were trying to duplicate yourself by bringing me in and teaching me what to do. But then even though there were 2 of us, we could only double our effort. It wasn't really scalable. And so, taking that into Mosquito Squad, what I realized, they had like 4 places where you had to do database entry. And I'm like, a spreadsheet, QuickBooks, a Sugar CRM, and then a Street Sync for routing. And every customer you got, I had to sit there at night, enter in all their information into each system. And I'm like, this is insanity. I am not doing this. And realizing like, what they had, I was like, yeah, I can't do that. So I started really studying like, all right, well, how do I make this more efficient? Because I don't have time to do this. Like, I got to go to work tomorrow. And, so I started testing out different things, reading, and that was really the motivating factor of trying to develop systems to better manage workload. And, then when you had the system, developing the process that it was going to go through. And, back then, this was before cloud internet. My system, my process was like, you get an intake form and you write it on a piece of paper. And like, then I got longer pieces of paper that had a piece that you could tear off. And, and it like, I think probably '08, I ran into a situation where I found like a stack of leads like this thick. And I'm like, did we ever contact these people? And it was on somebody's desk underneath a bunch of stuff. And I'm like, oh. So that was where I really started to jump into, all right, well, we need a online CRM that can be accessed anywhere. And, and that's what I ended up finding. And then I realized, well, now I need something for operations. And so like we were able, through systems and processes, we were able to move through those key barriers, trying to get to the first million. I think it took me 4 years to get to $1 million. Took me another, I don't know, 2 years after that to hit 2 million, and then by, I think total was 8 years to get to 3 million in sales, and that was really built on trying to refine systems and processes. And then, working on people, that was the third component. So, it was a lot of rapid growth and trying to solve for those problems that pushed us forward. And then, it's just, it was a lot of work. It was a lot of fun, but, without those things, like we wouldn't have been successful.
And so from there, it makes sense. Like, hey, I'm pretty good at mosquito control. Let's take on Kichler and FX and these other companies, and let's start making light fixtures, because that seems easy, right?
Well, it's funny because I remember like, you and I would be talking, and, it must've been 2008, like 2006, you got that first batch of 750, they were like $400 or $500 a luminaire. And, by '08, I think you had ripped out every single one of them and had to replace it with something. And we're like, if this is the best of the best, and this is how they're doing LEDs, like, there has to be something better, and I think we took that endeavor on the same way we take every endeavor. And we just said, how hard could it be?
Yeah.
Turns out really, really hard. But, it was, it's like we always jump feet first into something. And, I'm glad we did, but it was, if we knew how much work it was going to be to start, like, I think we probably would have been a little discouraged to do it.
Figured out a different way to spend our time, but you're right. I think it was a little later. 2008 is when we ordered those products, and about 2010 is where we had the big failures. I left the franchise system in 2011, and we started Sterling right at that 2011 time.
Well, you remember before we started Sterling, we were like, let's do a co-op.
Yes.
That's like herding cats.
Well, and you see it in the industry. You hear guys saying like, hey, I'm going to get a container. I'm going to do this, like, and we'll all go in together and we'll buy these lights, because, what we found is we were just using fixtures. So, a brass fixture, put a lamp in it, we could get a container. And I was buying them from, at that time, my franchise system for $52. And then I see these like, little weird emails you get, like $26, $25 to buy a container, and some like $9 or whatever. Like, you don't know what you're getting, but you'd see those things. And so, we started just looking into like, what is going on out there and what's this world made out of? But there's a lot of pitfalls that are involved in that. So we got 4 guys together. We invested $68,000. Time to pay up. What happened?
Yeah, nobody wanted to pay.
Nobody wanted to pay.
Everybody wanted, just ship me the fixtures that I need right now.
Just give me 200, and we're like, And so that's really what Sterling Lighting started off as. Like, well, if we're going to do this, if we're going to finance the whole thing, we might as well found a company doing it. So
remember my dad, like, he's like, I'll build a mezzanine and you could park a Mack truck on it.
Yeah.
And then we load all those fixtures on it, and then you see the the mezzanine starting to crack.
Yeah. It started falling.
We're like, oh, we need to get a space to hold this stuff.
Yep. Well, we started at the beginning. We just had a storage unit, and usually Josh or I, at the end of the day, you'd call in and say, hey, I have an order for 50 lights, and we run to the storage unit, load it up in our dirty work truck and everything, and go deliver it. And really, we had about 5 customers, Tim and a few others, Graham, a couple of these guys that were like, saw kind of what we were looking to do and bought in on it. And, you know, we kind of helped get their business going. 2 of them had never really done LED. That was 2011, where it was still fairly new. But we went around and we noticed that the LED lamps we were putting in were failing.
Well, I mean, and that's what the industry did. It was like they took a multi-reflector, halogen lamp, and then they just stuck an LED in it. Yeah. And then we're like, okay, well, what if we got aluminum housings and then try to help with the heat and like just try,
put the spring, put another spring on it.
And realizing it's not like we're not solving the heat issue. And, then we started other color shifting as, a light wouldn't fail completely. And then you'd be like 2,300 here, going close to 3,800 over here. And like designs looked terrible.
Yeah, designs looked terrible. They shifted quickly over time. And you remember going to lamp manufacturers, and I remember like this manufacturer who's using it, has a private labeled, and it's the 7 watt. So you can't get the 7 watt. And I said, well, why did they have a 5-year warranty on theirs and we're getting no warranty because it's inside of enclosed fixture? You remember them saying like, well, they actually don't get a warranty either. They just put that on there.
Yeah.
I was like,
yeah.
So there's no protection.
Yep.
So that got us into, the luminaire, where we're like, we brought in a team, 3-4 people. You were instrumental in that, to say, all right, how do we get rid of the heat out of this?
Well, remember we started off, I was like, hey, we could just use a socket and we'll put 2 points on it and then plug a driver into that. And then we can plug a cup into that.
And I never bring it up. After I went on so many of those,
it didn't go well.
The blue sockets. So it was our first. So it's like, just in case if this doesn't work, we could go back to a lamp. So we came up with an idea, and you're usually the one like pre-planning, like, what if this happens? What if that happens? But I think I had like 200 service calls because of that in 2012.
Well, and then we also had like just the fixtures we were using, like the cups were getting water in them. So then we tried to put a plastic cover over the cup, but then the heat was turning the plastic a different color, which would then throw it off. So it's like, there were tons of, we were building the airplane as we flew.
Yeah, as we were flying. So 2013 was our big change. That's where we came out with the SL01. We had a great electrical engineer that saw our vision. We had some good mechanical engineers, and we came out with the SL01, then the SL07, the SL04. And that's really, when I look at Sterling Lighting, that's where we became something special.
Well, it is. And we got, like, I worked hard on learning Chinese patents, and because I thought the American patents were too expensive, and wrong move.
Yeah.
Turns out the Chinese court system doesn't really work very well with you when you're American.
Yeah. So we had people stealing our designs. I remember we came out with the step light and the slimline light, because there's 3 big factories in the southern area of China that all the manufacturers are at. And we came out with those, and within 6 months, Dower's got those, Alliance has got those. Like, everybody's like copying what we have. And that's where we made the big move. Hillary is our full-time person, been with us forever. We brought on quality control through NOAA, and really brought in an organization and moved everything to just a small little brass factory. So we isolated ourselves, as we tend to do from the rest of the industry. We went, I don't want to be around anybody else. I just want to do my own little thing. Got this small little factory and started building better, and also building, like, using raw brass instead of recycled brass.
Well, that was a big thing. We had dezinkification with the recycled stuff. And then when we went and saw like what they put into it, you're like, oh, we have no idea if there's lead in this. We have no idea what's going
There's
in.
like doorknobs and toasters going in there. And
we're like, okay, well, we can't sell that. So then we switched off and got virgin brass. So just straight up hasn't been used before, just because then we knew what was in it.
Yeah. So how much harder has Sterling Lighting been than your Mosquito Squad?
It's just a very different business. When Mosquito Squad, pretty straightforward. It's a service-based business. We do, 400 to 500 services a day during the season. And, it's a very repeatable, we do lots of training, get guys up to speed, get them certified, get them out there. It's very straightforward.
Yeah.
Sterling, there's so much, like we're doing design, we're doing production, we're doing inventory warehousing, we're doing e-commerce,
Yeah. Sales,
and then
distribution.
sale. Yeah. It's just like, it's really like multifaceted compared to just a straight up service-based business.
Yeah.
So I would say it is a lot harder and less straightforward, because then you go like, how do we market this? Because it's not like,
How do we tell our story?
yeah, there's no like, how do you find the business owner that makes the decision, or the person in the company that makes this?
Yeah.
Just super difficult.
And we looked at distribution. That was one thing outside of coming out with a different product and different processes and everything else. We decided not to go traditional distribution. So most people hated us. But
Well, and it was a very good.
no, you can say, what do you see? Like, why did you were a big part of that? Like, what was in that decision for you? Like, why do you think going direct instead of using, a retail distributor?
Well, I think we had to decide who we wanted our customer to be. If we were going to go through distribution, and when I say distribution, I mean retail distribution, if we were going to go that route, well, then the distributor that's selling that product is our customer. And then they sell it on to their customer, the contractor, who then sends it installs it at the homeowner's home. But you lose that feedback. And I think what really kind of differentiated us is that we did design, we used products in the field, we observe, and then we're able to get that feedback and put that into what we're designing for our next iteration. And, we just didn't want we wanted to work with us, like the guys like us. And, the only way to do that was to sell direct, and the problem is like, well, how do you do that? Because it's a much harder thing to do, because you don't have the retail store right there where you can just swing by, pick it up, because, contractors are like us, like notoriously unorganized and going like, oh, I got that job today, I got to stop by,
I got to
do
go
this.
get something.
And then our solution to that was like, buy in bulk, reduce the number of products you're using, take it to, just one uplight that is going to do 80% of your work, have a driver and a cup and, different color temperatures and a couple optics. You could outfit every single one of your trucks with everything you need for most of your jobs. And then you eliminated all of the like, hey, what did we put in at that place? And then like, hey, what do we need there? We just have one light that can do as much as we can. And then we wanted to build off from there and keep the product line super small, because whether a contractor realized it or not, like in order to scale, they have to have a simplified line of products that they're installing.
Yeah. Could you imagine sending out your mosquito guys and saying, hey, we're going to pick out one chemical here and another chemical here and another one here?
Yep.
It's you duplicate on everything.
Well, and that was the lesson from Mosquito Squad, was simplify our product offering and have it ready to go.
Yeah. So Damien, you made it sound like if we were working directly with the retail distribution, that they might be selling their products not in an unbiased way, but maybe, depending on the incentive trip or how they're getting paid.
Well, I think the difficult thing is like, we're thinking of your business, and we were kind of at that time saying, how do we grow your business to $1 million in sales by streamlining and fixing the product?
Yeah.
To remove service and just callbacks and make everything easier and simpler on installation. So we're like, how do we scale? And so that was really what we're designing for, scaling your business. And then how can we then deliver that to these other businesses like you? And, and that was kind of the motivation. And when we looked at, all right, if you sell through distribution, like generally speaking, at each point, like we're going to sell it, we need to have a profit margin. They take it, they mark it up to their margin, and then they're selling it to the contractors. So if you wanted an end price of say $90, like to the contractor's hand, well then we're going to have to build a light or a luminaire with $20 because at each point there's a percentage markup. And so when we thought through that, we're like, well then, like what contractor could use this product to build his business and grow it to 1 million? Like, well, they couldn't. So it's like, well, we have to sell direct then because it just wouldn't, the numbers don't work to add that retail distributor in to keep the price point where it was at.
Yeah. And one of the challenges is we want simplicity in design, but we also have a huge focus on design itself.
Yeah.
And so many of the best lighting designers out there have seen Sterling Lighting because we focused on single source and better optics and control because, we both know most of the manufacturers aren't lighting designers.
That's right.
They're engineers.
Yeah.
So one thing you've gotten a chance to do is work with a lot of great lighting designers. Talk a little bit about that. Talk a little bit about the designers you've worked with at our events that we've had. You went to Greece.
I did.
How was that?
Oh, like event of a life or time of a life. Yeah. Like I took Michelle for our 20th wedding anniversary, maybe 20th. And Eleutheria showed us around, and we got to experience Athens and a lot of the architectural lighting in the city. And then and then there was a 2-star Michelin or 3-star Michelin restaurant that she did this amazing lighting that cast perfect shadows underneath a plate. It was eye-opening to see, when we talk, we're like, let's play with the light and see what it does. Whereas she talks, she's like, no, I don't play with lights.
Yeah.
Like I know what the light does. And therefore I can picture it in my mind's eye. And then I just do that. And so there's just the artistry to it that I think we realized that, as, our purpose in Sterling is to elevate the outdoor lighting industry. Like we could start trying to incorporate that and push, designers forward and kind of get them to elevate it, because as their designs are more valued and better, then they will make more money. And also it just raises the perception of, what lighting really does do, rather than the guy throwing a light in the ground because he had a trench open and then calling it a lighting design, which, it's like, that's nice, I guess. But, if you see design with intention, like there's nothing that replaces it. Like you think the nighttime looks better than it does during the day.
Yeah. So where do you see Sterling Lighting growing? We built up, dreams have come true. We've got this great opportunity. Where do you see 10 years down the road? What are some things you'd like to see happen in the industry and things we promote, changes we make?
So I think the vision is in our product design that we are designing to allow people to use light like a paintbrush, that you can be so nuanced and do things with light that our designers that are using Sterling can just make amazing things that last. So I think that is where, we're trying to grow is, in elevating the industry, because I think if we can lead, then there's going to be other manufacturers that have to follow. Like they can't produce shoddy workmanship in their lighting because they need to keep up with the bar that we keep trying to set higher. I think the other thing is that there's, what we've kind of realized is that there are more people that do lighting than just the outdoor lighting design install firm, yeah, which is the world we come from. And, and so I think trying to deliver quality lights to those people are going to be, one of the efforts that we try and move towards, because, the industry is much bigger than, we really ever realized.
Yeah. And that gets into, transitioning from just being a landscape lighting designer to a lighting designer. And you have the AV world, you have the architects, the landscape architects. There's a massive group out there, and bringing all these different factions together for the outdoor lighting design, right. Which incorporates so much. So it's a huge world in lighting, and I think there's so much we can improve on just overall lighting design, municipalities to making our areas better.
Well, it's like thinking in terms of fixture design or luminaire design with, light trespass in mind, with glare in mind, and, really trying to then assist guys in the design phase of their project. It's like design and rendering that you came out with for us, is kind of pivotal because now all of a sudden, like guys are being able to elevate their game pretty dramatically with well designed lighting. And then now they have something to follow and then grow their skill set as designers.
Yep. And I actually just got feedback the other day from someone. He's like, because of your renderings, we started taking our photographs different and looking at the project different and building out the lighting design differently. So yeah, our focus is that can we be beneficial? Great service. And I think the two of us together work very well. And final thing, like, why do you think that is? There's a lot of people out there that maybe watch this and say, how do you guys make a partnership work? Because the old saying is like, usually one person gets lazy, one gets greedy. It's usually the same person. How do you think we've made this work over the years?
Well, I mean, I think to start, like, we've had our fights for sure. But I think both of us, when we started Sterling was our, stepchild to begin with. And it was because we had our other businesses that we had to really focus on. And, it wasn't until about 10 years in that we grew the business enough where it's like, oh, we need to really start focusing much more effort and time and, really bringing more people in, like the things that we couldn't do. And, and so I think that was helpful, having really competent people coming in and helping each of us. And then also being okay with the delegation of roles. You're the CEO, I'm the COO. Both of us provide feedback to one another. We're very similar in a lot of things, but I think that role responsibility was kind of key for us to be able to, not accidentally step on one another's toes. And then also having implicit trust. Like, if you say, this is what I'd like, then, it's like, all right, then we're going to do that. May not agree with it, but, we're going to make sure and execute on that to the best of our ability, irrelevant of something. If, you have the final say, and then we go, okay, well, then that's what we're doing. Let's roll. But then in the same token, like, if I go like, ooh, I don't know about that, it's not just like, I am the CEO.
King Patrick has declared.
Yeah. So partnerships are really a lot like a marriage, and, you've got the finances and you've got the responsibilities and roles, which make it, tricky. And you've got, individuals with their own selfishness that always likes to pop up. And so, I think, it's like one of our core values is just being teachable, which, really means like you have to have a level of humility to accept criticism and accept feedback that, you may not be doing something right. And, I think there's the recognition that both of us have realized over the years that we tend to be the bottlenecks.
Yeah. Yeah. I think integrity and humility. And I think that's just true. Like, good designers have integrity and they have humility, good installers, good business people. And so then just trying to surround ourselves with good people.
Yeah.
So any final thoughts?
No, I mean, I'm really looking forward to the next, 10, 20 years. I mean, Lord willing, we can go until, I want to work till I die. And so Lord willing, he gives us that time. But, we really want to just impact our customers and impact the industry and, help people. I don't necessarily even care about a legacy. Like, if nobody remembers me, that's fine. But if we've impacted people's lives and, they're able to do something with that, they grow their business, they help their families. Who cares if they know who we are? But, if it's impacted them and been beneficial, I think that's what our goal is.
Great. Well, I'm glad to have you back in Virginia. I'm glad you're moving back to the great Commonwealth.
Yep.
God's country. So always fun. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you.